All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite place for talk therapy after the latest Chelsea men's team result. Dan, one of your hosts here. No Brandon, who made the ultra smart decision to take a trip out of town over the holiday weekend here in the US. And so I am stuck with Nick Verlaney on the other side of the talk box and just, how you feeling, Nicholas?
First of all, what a pro move. Brandon really knows how to pick his spots. He's missed some just god awful moments this season. And look, man, I mean, if you're really good at this, that's what happens. Yeah, I'm terrible, just like everyone else. I think this season has taken a lot of joy out of everyone's lives, and to talk about such a utter catastrophic second half performance today is just going to not be too fun. But you know what, Dan? We don't run away. We haven't run away all season. We do this for the public record that we were here after this horrific result because that's what we do. And we're going to just talk a little bit and see how it goes.
Look, if you've ever felt left out in the chance about where were you when we were shit, you now have that badge of honor and can understand what it was like as Chelsea worked their way back to victory next season, but likely not this year. We're going to talk about a couple things on this episode, specifically what happened in Manchester over the 90 minutes when Chelsea saw themselves drop another 3 points, this time to the Red Devils, not the Citizens. We're going to talk about who is on the rise because there were some good performances despite the bad day out. And then we're also going to talk about a couple of the latest headlines surrounding Chelsea at the moment ahead of transfer season. And that is going to include some conversation about all the news and noise surrounding one Mason Mount. But Nick, we're going to get into a couple of 3-word match reviews here, and I'd love to let you take over since someone has to help out here. Brandon isn't here to do any of the lifting tonight.
Yeah, we're pulling a little double duty. That's all right. Craig Ledoux, love this one. I love 3-word match reviews that contain some sort of imagery to paint a photo, picture, whatever. Craig Ledoux with lacking basic instincts with the little gift from the movie there. So that's always going to be a winner. Craig, you know how to get into these. Shane, live, laugh, lose. So good. Can we put that over like an entrance in front of Stamford Bridge somewhere? Maybe that would be great. Beth, we done yet? Great question. We're not. We're close, but we're not. McGleasy, one more game. Yep. Claire, no more, comma, please. Close again. 2 times champion Pizza Hutton. Drunk FIFA disaster. Hard to argue with any of these sentiments, Dan. They are all dead on, and a couple really creative ones in there.
I went with United, we fall. Felt like that was
Good.
Very apt description about what happened. And then you went with one that is going to make some people laugh. I think people are going to chuckle when they hear yours.
Everyone at this point has probably seen the video that Brandon took, or you take.
No, Brandon took it because I crossed the ball in.
Yep. We were screwing around at a training facility in Minneapolis and trying to score goals, and Dan hit a corner and I whiffed one right in front of goal. And that was basically Chelsea. So I went with Chelsea nicked it. That was me. And you know what? If the standard of play is Nick Verlaney, we're in a really bad spot here, Dan. Really bad.
Look, the standard of podcasting is high. The standard of play, maybe not so great. But those who are playing at a 10, we want to thank Jonathan on Patreon for joining the community there. We want to thank everybody leaving wonderful 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We'd love to go up to 3,000 5-star reviews on Spotify. We're at 4.9, over 2,000. So that's our summer goal, our summer aspiration. It's effectively our reading list, if you will. So help us out with that one as we jump into some match details, because it was Manchester United this past Thursday, May the 25th in the Premier League. Location was the theater of our, not dreams, our nightmares. And it was a scoreline of Manchester United 4, Chelsea 1. Casemiro, Martial, both getting in goals before the end of the first half, and then sorry, not Enzo, Bruno Fernandez getting a penalty in the 73rd minute. Rashford poking it home in the 78th. Tried to call game, but Felix jumps in the 89th minute to say, "Not yet. I want the goal of the month celebration for the Chelsea men's team." So we're going to run it over to the fifth stand highlights because we're gluttons for punishment, and we want to thank them for letting us use this audio to relive the horror of the 90 minutes that we got a chance to watch today. So we'll be right back. Okay, Nick. So as Brandon would say, it's lineup time. Why don't you tell the lovely people who we put onto the field?
Yeah, we went back to a back four. So Kepa in goal. Lewis Hall continuing to play left back, stroke left wing back, and doing it well, I would say. Trevo and West in the middle, and Captain Cesar Azpilicueta on the right. Midfield three of Enzo Fernandez playing that deeper lying role. Conor Gallagher and Carney Chukwuemeka. Is that you? Do my eyes deceive me? Is that one Carney Chukwuemeka? That's amazing. And then we got the front three that I think everyone wanted to see with Mudryk, Havertz, and Madueke. The bench, Christian Pulisic, a rare run out in the 64th minute for Mudryk. Joao Felix in the 64th minute for Havertz. Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the 82nd minute for Chukwuemeka. Hakim Ziyech still continuing to see time at Chelsea in the 82nd minute for Madueke. And, oh my God, David Datro Fofana on the 82nd minute for Conor Gallagher. Unused subs of Edouard Mendy, Kalidou Koulibaly, Thiago Silva, and one young number 58 on the shirt, Alfie Gilchrist, making a Premier League bench.
First men's team squad appearance for the Chelsea men. So well done for young Alfie.
Congratulations.
Got a front row seat to seeing that. Look, Our stats at a top line level, expected goals for United 5.13 to Chelsea's 1.93. Ball possession, we had 59% of the ball compared to their 41%. We had 14 shots to their 18, 5 shots on target to their 9, 5 off target to their 4, and then 4 block shots to their 5. We had 4 corners to their 3, 6 fouls to their 12, both 1 yellow card apiece. We had 3 big chances, of which we missed 3. So Sam, update your stat there. They had 7 big chances. They missed 4 of them. They hit the woodwork twice as well. And I'm going to give you one random stat. Again, XG philosophy and SofaScore, a little bit of a variance, minimal between the two XGs, but XG philosophy saying Man United created 5.31 XG against Chelsea, the most they've ever accumulated in a Premier League game since they've started collecting records in 2014.
Is that good, Dan, or what? Is it maybe not very good?
That would be the opposite of it. Another bonker stat, because I'm throwing in here, good friend Scott, known as Carefree Youth, saying Cesar Azpilicueta is making his 507th appearance for Chelsea. He has more appearances at Chelsea than his 10 teammates combined at 499. Kepa was at the top of the list at 162, all the way down to Hall and Madueke, who were level at 11 apiece. But that was a very stunning stat, and it showed you that this, I think, was the youngest Chelsea Premier League side in the entirety of the Premier League area. 23 and I think 200 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So young, and they played like it. It was look, I mean, just to sum it up, it's fucking horrific. You 5.31 xg or 1.3 and whatever, doesn't matter. A lot of goals in your xg, and I'm not even an xg guy. That's huge. They missed 4 big chances and they scored 4 goals. Like, that tells you it could have been 6 or 8.
It's not great. Nick, you did, though, come up with an MPET shithouse moment of the match, and so I'll let you run into that one.
Yeah, and look, I know people hate Christian Pulisic now, and that's fine. It is what it is. Pulisic did go up on De Gea a little bit. Very clean. It wasn't a dirty thing. But De Gea hit out at him, and he just got in everyone's face, and I appreciated that. At that point in the game, when we were getting our ass kicked, I appreciate a little bit of fire, and you know what? He's going to get a shithouse moment of the match for me. That's what I got.
Well, there you go. We're going to jump into the match recap, the summary, going through all the salient details in just a moment, but we're going to let our sponsors do some talking for a second, and we'll be right back. Okay, Nick. So it had the makings of a great start in the fourth minute. We had Mikhailo Mudryk get the ball, phenomenal chance. Didn't do the best with it. That individual shot had a point 0.5 XG by itself. And just as quickly, 4 minutes later, you had Casemiro ended up taking it home completely free in a set piece, just making it happen. And it was essentially the summary of Chelsea's season in 8 minutes of football.
100%. I mean, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. I would say for the entire first half, we were better than United. We played some really good football. It was an open game, lots of back and forth, lots of counter pressing, and within 4 minutes. So there was a chance in the second minute with Chukwuemeka getting a shot in. That wasn't a high XG shot or anything, but it was an open shot, and I was like, oh my god, someone took a shot at goal. What an unbelievable thing! And then Lewis Hall, on an incredible counterattack, puts the ball on a fucking plate for Mikhailo Mudryk, who I genuinely don't know what this cat is doing right now with his feet, because every time he shot at goal this year, it's been woeful. And it shows you, I think, that he's a bigger project than we originally thought. Lewis Hall has significantly outperformed expectations, and I think Mudryk has significantly underperformed expectations, and that was no more clear than on that one goal. I know they don't play the same position. Whatever. You get what I'm saying. Both young players, both with a ton of potential. One is taking his opportunity. The other one is shitting it down his leg. And I think for those Mudryk fans out there who are probably listening to me drone on about him going, well, Nick, we have to see him, get a real chance, a real run in the team to build confidence. I totally agree with you. I don't think he's a bad player, but I think he's going to take a hell of a lot of work, and it would not surprise me if he's not a locked-on starter for some time at Chelsea. That's kind of how I took today.
He's going to be one where Pochettino coming in is going to have to focus attention from a coaching perspective within his setup to get him going in the right direction. Again, lots of promise, lots of potential, but I think as you kind of rightly alluded to, that while after that goal, Chelsea really struggled to stay in the game. Around the 30th minute or so, we finally got back our footing. We were able to get stuff going again. Havertz, Hall, Gallagher all had big chances. Havertz and Gallagher did. Hall's, I think, was a 0.17 XG. But all of them had a shot and were able to place the ball. And we were able to start putting pressure in, keeping it a little bit more compact, avoiding letting the ball slip across the halfway line. Generally, the best spell of the game for Chelsea.
The play was good. I mean, I know people are going to, see the result, and, the second half was an utter disaster. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But, the first half, we outplayed them on the pitch. We just couldn't score. I mean, at the very least, I should say, it should have been 2-2 going in to halftime. Gallagher's shot cannot go wide. That is an embarrassing miss. Havertz, open header, center of goal from a guy who's won a Champions League with a goal, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. It was 6 yards outside of the post. They replayed it at halftime, and Tim Howard was like, what in the world are you doing? No one heads the ball like that. And look, you can't keep missing shots like that, because you're gonna be made to pay for it. And yeah. That to me, Dan, is just, when you talk about the story of this season, it is our inability to score a fucking goal at any crucial point of any match that has meant that we are going to end the season in 13th or 14th place.
Well, when you look at it in terms of just where we rank in Premier League sides for the delta from expected goal. So plus being extremely positive means you're outperforming. If you rank first in that list, it's a very positive thing. If you rank lowest in that list, like many other things in life, it's a negative and you are below the expectation of where you should be performing at. Chelsea are 19th out of 20 Premier League clubs, I think minus nine point something expected goals over the entirety of the season. So we did get a fully brightened within the way that this Chelsea side adopted a new identity this season and very much could not get out of our own way or make a way to convert on those chances. And so that is why we find ourselves in the position we're in, where we are crying for a lot of change to solve the problem of Chelsea's inability to score. But after all that positive movement, it was a Martial goal at the very final moments of the first half in extra time when it just completely removed the momentum that Chelsea had established heading right into the end of that first half.
Beautiful pass from Casemiro, has to be said. He really, I think he was probably my man of the match today. Absolutely delicious pass. And then look, I mean, Aspi could not catch Martial right now if he gave him a 5-yard head start. I mean, there's just no way that was going to happen. And yeah, I mean, you go in after all of that hard work, after everything that you had done, maybe a little bit unlucky. You go from a little bit unlucky to now you're just going to lose because we don't have the 3 goals enough to save our lives. And yeah, I mean, it basically all of the uproar on Twitter was totally deserved at that point. I mean, it's another hopeless performance, and it turns out, Dan, that it got worse.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is over the entirety of the 90 minutes, there were runs that Aspi made and close downs he made, like the one on Rashford in particular.
Yeah, it was a good
like
one.
He made some. I think it's just not, he's not at the point where he's doing it consistently across 90 minutes and is capable of tracking down every one of those players individually. So I think it's just a matter of you have a risk. There's a risk in that position when you play him, and you have to hope that you're maintaining more possession of the ball, that you're keeping it across the halfway line, halfway line as much as possible, so you don't put yourself in a position where he gets exposed or others get exposed. And the challenge is that we were very open to the counter every single time it became available. Like Lewis at times struggled. You know, he had better recovery, but he struggled as well. And I think those happen when you have Mudryk and Madueke also maybe kind of getting dispossessed up top and not necessarily getting back as quickly either. So like those were, I think, points that could have been addressed or maybe pointed out at halftime. However, oh boy, it's the 64th minute. You're getting changes on both sides. You know, Joao Felix comes in along with Busick. Ten Hag responds, puts in Garnacho and then Fred as a way to make something happen. And that was effectively the screw turning in the game. Like Chelsea didn't get out to a good start anyway in the second half, but that was the moment where it just felt like the locks were in and Chelsea didn't have any of the freedom they needed to make anything happen. Pressure was mounting in midfield and there was no space to operate.
No, I mean, I think my overall thoughts in the second half is that this team lacks character. They lack fortitude, and they lack a coolness under pressure that was just so apparent in the second half. And it started with Wes, a guy who I think has been largely a decent performer this year. I wouldn't say he's blown the doors off of expectations or anything. He's been pretty okay. And made a petulant challenge on Bruno Fernandes, who was always going down because he goes down even when no one touches him. So you knew that shit was going to happen. But it was a penalty. It was an absolute penalty. And it was a stupid-ass, brainless thing to do in that situation when the guy's already bypassed you. Like reaching behind with your foot and trying to clip a ball that's 3 yards away at that point is just not the move, and that's not what anyone I'm sure, and his professional coaching would tell him to do. And it's a penalty, and the game's already a little bit on edge at that point, and then it's completely over.
Yeah, the interesting thing that you talk about relating to the coolness under pressure and then the character, I think continued into the point where Kepa is trying to do the head games element with Fernandez a little bit. You have afterwards they're celebrating and Enzo standing alone in a sea of red, bodying up just a little. And the absence of other Chelsea players in the surrounding area
Yeah.
was very weird. Just as a still, if you just took the still, heck, if you even turned it into a reel, you took it into a 15-second reel, the amount of other Chelsea players swarming to try and be a part of it or try to release the tension or try to cool things down. That was just so odd. It was so
it
odd.
was Trev. It was Trev, and that was it. And Trev only came over to stop Jaden from being stupid too. So I don't even know what that was about. I think it was about Bruno's celebration or whatever. But like at that point, like you missed the opportunity 3 goals ago to get in their face, right? Like, so while I appreciate it and like I want Chelsea to move back to a team that has more fouls, that is smarter without the ball, that is shithouse. Like I want Chelsea to be shithouse again, desperately, because I think we're going to pick up a hell of a lot more points than trying to play around everybody and be the nice guys. Like the time for that, Enzo, was at the start of the game, not after you've just conceded a third. And again, it just shows to me like, yes, he did show some character there. And like, I think my broad statement from earlier doesn't apply to every individual person, but when you look at the performance as a whole, it does apply, because we completely lost it from that point on and played the silliest game that I've seen us play in a really long time. I think the second half, Dan, was worse than the Arsenal first half.
Ooh. Well, when Rashford had the opportunity, I'm going to call it the reverse Mudryk, because he found his shot in very easy position and absolutely smashed it home. So those who believed in him for Fantasy Premier League were rewarded quite kindly, and almost called game, except for the fact, as we mentioned earlier, winner of the goal of the month, Joao Felix, finds an opportunity to score. Pretty nice goal. It just felt like it felt like the worst type of like good news you could get in a terrible situation.
Yeah, I'm happy that he scored, because if he wouldn't have scored there and Pulisic was as wide open as he was,
sure,
on the left, that would have been an all-time blooper. So if you're going to take that one on, you basically have to score it, or you wouldn't be mad if Frank pulled him after that. So yeah, nice goal for sure. And I'm glad we scored a goal. They're not too frequent, these goals for us. So
you got to enjoy them when they come along. Look, that is the match summary. There are other players we want to talk about, like Lewis Hall and Carney Chukwuemeka, in more detail, and we'll do that right after this break. We talk about players who are on the rise, putting themselves in the best possible situation as the club looks ready to hit a reset button this summer. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, Nick, we can't stop heaping praise on Lewis Hall. So actually, I'm going to revert the order here, because we gave Lewis a lot of love. We've been giving him a lot of love over the past few pods. Let's give Chukwuemeka a little bit of an opportunity to get some plaudits here on his first Premier League start, his first start since January 15th, 2023. So it's been a minute since he's earned a starting role. And this also comes on the back of maybe some substitute appearances, not a lot of time in the starting 11 or even as a substitute. But this felt like a really good audition for the next manager for Chukwuemeka, as like, here's what I can do for you.
Yeah, I think he played relatively well in the first half. I mean, I think the second half was bad for everybody. So like, let's just separate these two things out. I know you and Sam were talking about him, in the Wednesday pod about his ball carrying ability, and that is absolutely true. There were times out there I was like, is that Ruben Loftus-Cheek carrying the ball through the midfield and distributing it? And I think there is a really talented player in there. Obviously, taking a rip or two at goal is great. I think his interchange with Madueke and Aspi was better than I expected it to be, just because those three players have not played together in a Premier League game up to this point, and so you kind of factor all that stuff in. I think that's a really interesting prospect for Chelsea. I also liked on set pieces that he does provide a big body in there that the opposition has to deal with. Of course, didn't score a goal, didn't get an assist or anything like that today, but I really, I think there was some good effort in there. There was some decent tracking back in the first half. There was some not so decent tracking back in the second half, if we're just being honest about it. But yeah, I mean, like as a guy who hasn't really played a whole lot in the last 5 months, I think you can probably forgive him for some of this stuff. But I left feeling good about him. I think it's impossible to judge him fully after 82 minutes.
Just look at some of his stats. He had 5 ground goals, 5 wins. He had 2 dribbles, 2 successful. He was fouled 1 time, 1 interception, 2 tackles. He had the 1 off-target shot. He had 93% accurate passes, 1 out of 1 accurate long ball. And again, I was strong individual performance. Again, the collective team continued to be disjointed. And so I think you could fairly say that it's extremely hard to judge some of the players right now. And I would say that that's a fair statement, given the way that they're set up, given the way they're playing right now is not necessarily going to be the way that we play next season. And so it's more looking for flashes, something to build on, an opportunity to say, hey, there's something here with this player, whether or not they impress enough during preseason on the summer tour to work themselves into a starting position, to be a first player off the bench substitution next season, part of the depth in the squad. That still is open to consideration. But I think what we're trying to do in this segment is really focus on players who are advocating for themselves through those individual moments and matches to be in consideration. And I think just as much as we're lauding praise on Chukwuemeka, I think Lewis Hall is the other one that I imagine he's going to get a chance to start again on Sunday. And I would imagine just the trend line for him is we'll be talking about him again, Nick, because he is probably had his best performance of the season in this moment.
Yeah, look, I'm caveating both of these young players because when I look at the problems at Chelsea, it's not either one of these guys, right? The problems at Chelsea are extended far deeper, far broader than 2 young players. One who came through the academy, one who was a transfer in last year or over the summer. Lewis Hall is creating chances every fucking match he plays. He should have had 2 assists in the first half and 1 in the second half. If Lewis Hall had left this game with 3 assists, we'd all be losing our mind. Yes, the defensive positioning on the counter was tough. Yes, he did blow it on, I think it was the second goal. But what else can you expect from him? Like, I really don't know. He's 18 going on 19, playing at Old Trafford in a position that isn't even his position, and he's outplaying your $90 million left wing signing. And
it's his position now, baby.
Look, man, I just...
He merely adopted it. He was born in it.
I was born in it. Yeah, look, I just... If any of our forwards could finish their fucking chances, then this kid would probably be on 6 or 7 chances made this year assists. And you would look at him differently, I think, than you are with like the missed chances. Is that fair?
It's fair. I think the thing that he is doing right now with the way that he's playing. He's helping move us into a position where if someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek wants to be a starter, wants to go to AC Milan in the summer, and you want to move on Kukurea, as you're also looking potentially to bring Ian Matson back into the side, but a very successful loan on Burnley, helping them get promoted. Lewis
Yes,
Hall's giving
please.
you.
I like this scenario. Go on, please.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, I'm giving you something really good. So he becomes an option to give you cover across multiple positions, to give your guys an opportunity to not get ground into stone, ground into dust from stone during the entirety of the season, even though we'll play less matches because, surprise, no European football, at least 10 matches off the board for this Chelsea side. I think, to me, it's creating a situation for us that is super advantageous where we could book transfer profit off of someone like Ruben leaving and promote Lewis into the first team side fully heading into next season and give him an opportunity for real minutes. Again, it's all going to come down to the manager. It's all going to come down to who else we keep and retain and sell and can't sell. But I'm going to start heavily advocating, like, it will not be a shock during keep sell loan where I'm like, hey, Lewis Hall, let's keep him.
Yeah, way to preview that. So obviously we put out some social content from our pod on Monday, and Ishan chose to use my Lewis Hall quote as one of our social posts, and
he's going to do it again.
He's going to do it again. and look, I by the way, I fucking stand by that. And if you go look at the comments on that post, it shows you that Twitter is just full of bot accounts. Because anyone who's watched him play knows that he's a real talent and can use their brain a little bit and project that he is going to improve and perhaps even play in a more natural midfield position at some point. And the fact that he can carry the ball, the fact that he can dribble, the fact that he can create space, the fact that he can deliver passes in front of an attacker so that they could do something with it. Hypothetically, we haven't seen it happen yet, but hypothetically, a real striker would be able to put the chances away. Like, it's not hard to project where he could be. I have a bunch of people who are like, sell him and buy some superstar. No, you need Lewis Halls in your team. You need him. One, we just spent $500 million. I don't know if you guys remember that already. We've already spent it. We're going to spend more in the summer because this team is broken. But you need Lewis Halls to come through the academy, the excellent fucking academy that we have. The men's team is the only misfunctioning or malfunctioning part of Chelsea Football Club right now. Women are about to win another league and FA Cup double, and the youth are just a machine and cranking out talent. You need him in the team. You need people like him to come through. You need your Conor Gallaghers. You need your Mason Mounts. You need all these guys to come through so that when you want to buy someone great, truly great, excellent, top tier, competing against Real Madrid, competing against, whatever, that you can safely afford those players on big wages, right? Because
competing against Aston Villa and Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, really, kind of now, but no, man, it's we've been talking about the process and protocol for years now. Tweeds has talked about it. Phil has talked about it. Sam has talked about it. Like, if you try to listen to Dusty, it's listen to those guys who know their shit. Like, it's how good teams make stuff work, and they're a culture. They're winning culture within the club that you don't have to teach. It's awesome.
Well, speaking about winning culture and talking about a full shift of conversational topic, because we want to get into recent reports, what's going on. Obviously, you're 90 minutes plus extra time away from the end of this season, closing a book on this, closing this chapter, rather. The book of Chelsea is long and filled with a lot of horror and a lot of ecstasy, but this chapter is finally coming to a close. There's been a lot of news since we last recorded about what's going on with Mason Mount and Mason Mount's contract. We saw David Ornstein reporting that Mason Mount was leaning towards joining Manchester United if Chelsea agrees to sell. The talks were expected between the clubs in due course. Other sides have been pursuing the 24-year-old England International are aware of his preference. We've seen reports throughout the last 3 to 6 months linking him with Liverpool, linking him now more recently with Arsenal. And we've seen now more concrete reporting around this link with Manchester United. Chelsea are in the position where Mason would have 1 year left in his contract at the end of the season. Chelsea have traditionally wanted to get a deal done before you wind down the clock and have no more time on the board left to negotiate. And so if Chelsea are in a position where Mason Mount does not want to sign a contract at this point, this is the summer, this is the time where you would look to move on from the player. And there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of feeling. I think, Nick, we would want to maybe caveat some of this by saying we've high-fived Mason Mount at the end of a Champions League final, and that is going to color a lot of our opinion on this. I think there's also a likelihood that it's going to be very hard to find someone who has had his level of goals plus assist contribution and bring them in to Chelsea for anything less than what you have or what you will sell Mason Mount for at the end of the season, if you do, to someone like Manchester United. And so I'm going to turn it to you. But before I do, I want to read Simon Johnson's tweet here as he was leaving Old Trafford. He said, a group of Manchester United fans are singing Mason Mount's name, clearly happy about the possibility. So I will let you have your full take, and then I'll share some more thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean it's a good setup. I put out some tweets. They've been engaged with a lot in bad faith, and there's been a lot of muting and blocking happening for folks this week who are coming into my mention saying Mount's trash, Mount's greedy, Mount's this, Mount's that. Like, shut up, get out of my fucking mentions, man. Like, or don't, and I'll just mute you, and you'll never know. I think this Mason Mount we've talked about for a long time. There are some people who really rate him. I count myself among that crew. That's not a big surprise to anyone who listens to this podcast regularly. I think he's a superstar. 13 goals, 16 assists last year. Obviously had an injury-riddled season. No one else has really stepped up to replace him, by the way, which should tell you basically all you need to know about his position, his influence in the team. I think that he and Reece James are the future of Chelsea Football Club. They have won a Champions League together. They are both leaders. I would tip Mason Mount personally to be the captain of Chelsea Football Club. I think he has all the intangibles and the leadership ability to be a captain. And with that setup, letting Mason Mount leave Chelsea without having made every fucking crazy attempt to keep him here is unfathomable to me. It is unfathomable that we have got to the position where a lot of leaks are happening in the press, where you're getting whispers of stuff behind the scenes. I am just dumbfounded as to how we even fucking got here after Reese's contract was done in October. And the promise when the new ownership came in was that we're going to get these two signed and then we're going to move on to the rest of the plan, Dan. And I look, if you want to have a good faith argument with me about, I'm not saying you, but if you out there want to have a good faith argument with me about, well, does he do this? Does he do that? Is Poch going to use him the right way? Whatever. And we can be on the opposite sides of that argument, but you cannot tell me that this boy is not Chelsea. Like, no other team would let a talisman-like figure leave for less than you gave to Cucurella, or you gave Brighton for Cucurella. Like, that is insane to me.
There are people you're never going to convince that Mason Mount is a quality player. So those who are acting in bad faith or don't want to necessarily get themselves into a conversation where the data is going to prove them wrong, the eye test is going to prove them wrong, and have already solidified their opinion, this is not a conversation towards them. This is a conversation with like-minded individuals who are trying to talk about the reality of a situation that has should have been an easy conversation. And I think what's troubling about this is the lack of transparency around how, who, what is happening with Mason's contract. You have Frank coming out and talking about it in the moments after the match, mentioning that, it looks difficult to get done. He's clearly regarded extremely well. So you got Frank, who, again, one of the Mr. Chelsea's themselves, trying to talk about the situation. But here's my big struggle is we have seen when Boli or Igbali in particular have been involved in negotiations. We had very accurate reporting throughout the Mudryk deal and throughout the Enzo Fernandez deal and even the Reece
Yep.
James contract that that level of leadership was involved and a deal came together quickly for some, quicker than some because some had release clauses, and then quicker or got accomplished when it looked like they were going to be very difficult deals to do. We're at a point now where Chelsea have multiple directors. We've seen one image from the entirety of like all this structure, kind of who reports to who, where the dotted lines are at, from the Athletic trying to chart out what this reporting structure looks like. But all the reporting has seemed to indicate that it's nebulous, that there's a desire for a flatness to that relationship and a collaborative working environment, which can be great, which can be absolutely great to encourage dialogue and conversation. But it feels as if there's not a concrete or coherent understanding about where the delta is in terms of the contract. Again, numbers are going to get reported. You're going to have individuals in favor of the club getting the best deal, floating their numbers of how wild and crazy a claim is going to be. And then you're going to have agent side individuals negotiating and saying, well, actually, it's not that out of bounds. It's not that crazy. And so, again, you have multiple sides to all this. They're going to leak different reporting on what's actually happening in this situation. We know, and we talked to Naz earlier this week, Mason is one of the most available figures in terms of commercial opportunities for the club and image rights, which talk about the breakdown between the percentage of money that the club gets to retain and that the player gets to retain would likely be a point of conversation. And so with all of the end contract length, so the wage, which includes things like bonuses, the contract length, and things like image rights are all an important part of that package. And it doesn't seem like there's a really good understanding about where the holdup is. And it feels as if you just rang Igbali and said, hey, can you come in here and be involved with this? Or Todd, can you come in here and be involved with this? That it could get done. Or if Pochettino comes in, as we've heard reporting, that he likes Mason Mount, that he thinks he can't get sold, that he could come in and potentially save it. But it feels like if that's what has to happen every time that a negotiation is going south, that's where it starts opening us to, opening the technical director group to a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's office space. What exactly do you say you do here? It's absolutely insane to really get. I think for those who are like, I want Mason Mount out of the club, which I think you're a muppet, whatever. You'd have to sell him for 150 million to get the real value out of someone at that level, right? Who's had that big of an impact, that much of a leader, 24 years old, about to enter the prime of his career. Like, we just bought Mudryk for what, 80 in January, and Mudryk is not even close to the player that Mason Mount is, like not even remotely close. So, and I just, again, I think your point on if Daddy Warbucks has to come in and save the day all the time, that's a very bad sign. And maybe there's some restructuring required to get some stuff done. But I think more than that, you've had a whole year to figure this out. You've had a full year to get it done. If you sell Mason Mount to a top 6 rival for pennies on the dollar, like I question the intelligence of everyone associated with that move, and that's probably not the strongest words I could use on something like that. Like, it. And by the way, I could say this: if the situation is so bad, right, and it's so chaotic, and the negotiations have been so difficult that he just wants to leave now, and that's his choice, then you know what? I will be really upset to see him go. But whatever. You can't do anything about that, right? I think the other thing that Naz brought up too is like, if you're only going to sell him for 55 million, just eat the last year of his contract and see if you can convince him to stay.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it at 55 million, just keep him for another year, start him, see how he gets along with Poch, and maybe there's another deal to be done. Maybe comes in straight away, starts banging in the goals again. Like I just
Or a
what's
goodwill
the
gesture
point?
of, hey, you know what? We're gonna just we're gonna write you a better deal for a part of the contract, and it's just great terms for you. It's not an extension. It's not like here's just dollars that are gonna make you happier because right now you are lower paid than a vast majority of the existing squad,
It's on 80K a week.
and that can't feel good either. And so again, this is not advocating just for on behalf of Mason. This is advocating for like common sense to rise to the top of what has seemingly become a stalemate between whomever is owning the negotiation of the hierarchy and Mason's camp. And so you wish you could get in the room and be the mediator to help them figure it out, but it doesn't seem like unless Todd or Igbali drops in and solves the problem themselves, takes it into their own hands rather, that it's going to get done in a seemingly good way unless Pochettino is able to be the forcer, drive that kind of conversation or that decision.
Well, I mean, there's leverage there, right? Because that dude has not signed and he's not been announced. So, if he comes in and says that Mason's non-negotiable, give him what he wants, like that's a possibility. Also, to everyone in the leadership group, it's been a tough year. Losing Mason Mount would be a horrific year. That it would go from bad to worse, not only from an optics perspective, which is largely what we're talking about here. And we've said this before: we are not in the negotiating room. We don't know anything more than in the public eye about what's happening, what's being reported upon. But like, it doesn't take a genius, Dan, to go keeping this guy around in the midst of all this turmoil and chaos, a leader of your team, in my mind, a future captain of your team, is a good thing to do. Like, in a sea of transition, let's not add another huge fucking piece to that puzzle. That's all.
Yeah, we want to go after signing midfielders to build out that part of the roster once again. And so we'll talk about Manuel Ugarte, who is an individual that Chelsea have targeted. There was reports today for Barista talking about the fact that Paris Saint-Germain have sent a bid to Sporting, but it's different than the 60 million euro release clause, so it's not done yet. But Chelsea are absolutely in the race, and Ugarte is one of the names on the list, including Moises Caicedo, who, as we're hearing, additionally, that there will be a bidding war, and Brighton is absolutely licking their lips at the fact that Chelsea are coming back to the table with money. Oh, come to the front of the line, my friends. Like that is where we're at. So
do the bouncers let us to the front of the line after all the money we spent with them? Do you think that they're like, hey, come on in? Is it like a buy
the
one, get
bouncers are
one?
concerned about how frequently we're coming back to this club and willing to splash cash. That's what the bouncers are concerned about. They're letting us in, but we're getting an eye at the front of the line. So this is a player that if you go back and listen to the pod from earlier this week, Sam and I did a deep dive on a few of the midfielder candidates that Chelsea could be going after. Moises Caicedo would be a very interesting talent, extremely expensive, likely over 100 million at this point. I imagine you could get that knocked down. It's crazy. They were quoting 80 million in January, and I think he's gotten better. And I think Sam highlighted the fact that he looks like he's gotten better. So if we're just saying like where negotiations are going to start, their anchor is at 100 million.
It's insane. I mean, I really enjoy. I'm only I just got through the middle of the Ugarte section of the Wednesday pod. I haven't quite gotten all the way through yet, but I think Sam's characterization of the most tenacious ball winner in Europe is something that kind of made my ears perk up a little bit for Ugarte. I mean, obviously, if you've watched any of Brighton this season, Caicedo's been really, really good. I don't know if we should go fund their whole club by buying two players from them and a coach. I think that would seem a little crazy.
Should have just bought Brighton.
You should have just bought the whole club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really you can't spend 100 on Caicedo. You just couldn't do it. Not when you need a goalkeeper and a center forward. I think that's just absolutely insane. So, but I think both are really interesting prospects. Obviously, my pick of the litter is Declan fucking Rice, but we're nowhere on that. So let's just start looking elsewhere. And I guess Lavia is going to be the place we end up. Probably. I don't know.
Well, if you want Ugarte, he's there. You just got to pay the 60 million euro release clause, and you can start the paperwork, start the docu-signs. But Lavia is the other player where there was a minor update in the Times indicating that City are likely not in the running to use their right of first refusal to acquire the player, which doesn't really surprise anybody considering just how good and how deep their squad are, and particularly as they look to extend some of their other players who are in that midfield position for another season. Unsurprising. This feels more like you might get the player, but might not. There's not necessarily been the same type of fervor around Lavia, even though he's looked like one of the better players in the Southampton side that have really struggled this season. So I think that rounds out like the news updates at the moment, Nick. But that's going to do it. I think we tried to get to a more positive place at the end of this. We at least feel like we've talked out some of our feelings and can head into the final Sunday of the Premier League season a little lighter, just a little lighter.
I don't know if I've ever been more excited for a season to end. I am. But should we pop champagne on Sunday for the recording? What should we do?
No, it's Miller High Life because it's the champagne of beers.
Yeah,
the only option.
We should definitely do that. I was watching. Do you remember those old Miller High Life commercials from like back in the day? Go watch those. Do yourself a favor. Just go on YouTube. They're amazing. They're really good. Miller High Life's on Sunday, Dan. We're going to watch Chelsea lose 3-0 to Newcastle at home. For Frank to be hopefully applauded at the end of it, but God, at this point, tough to say. And we're going to get to see Mason Mount do a lap of honor before he leaves for Manchester United for pennies on the dollar. So, cool.
Could be the last match for many players this Sunday. And so for those who are getting a chance to go, even if the result is terrible, we hope that for those players who have been wonderful servants to the club, that they get a fine applause or at least acknowledgement for their long service. I'm thinking of someone like Cesar Azpilicueta at the end of the match. But yeah, it's just a weird end of the season. I think it's almost to the point where it's like, what am I going to do with that first Sunday or Saturday or Sunday that doesn't involve a Premier League game? And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there. You're probably going to golf.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah. No, I'm very excited. I'm playing twice over Memorial Day weekend. So we're getting warmed up, Dan. We're into summer now. Come on.
All right. Well, before this turns into a golf podcast, I'm going to have tips on how to hit a couple
Michael
over
Block.
par. We will.
What a hero.
We will break this one, and thank you for listening. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.